Hey everyone, and welcome to my March Ask Me Anything video. So just like I did in January and February, I'm going to be answering 5 of your questions submitted from either my reader list subscribers or social media followers. So let's get right into it. Question number 1. What are your plans for Camp NaNoWriMo this month? Well, if you don't know what Camp NaNoWriMo is, it's a twice-yearly challenge in which writers set a custom goal and then they meet in virtual chat rooms, which we call cabins, to cheer each other on and support each other. So it's kind of a spin-off of National Novel Writing Month, which is the famous November challenge in which you write 50,000 words in 30 days. So for April's Camp NaNoWriMo, my goal is to do 60 hours of outlining, writing, etc. on Desertera number 4, though I might cheat and play with some other ideas as well. So I've set an hour goal instead of a word count goal because I really need to focus on getting back to committing to the time it takes to write a novel and establishing a better routine because, to be honest, ever since we moved out to California, I haven't been the best about creating a set routine, and that's something I really know I should do and I want to do for my own productivity and goals. All right, question number 2. This is a cool one. So, what inspired the steampunk desert setting for your Desertera novels? Well, when I was first coming up with the whole Desertera concept, the story came to me first. And the setting kind of came after because I wanted something that would support the story but also kind of be a character in itself. So my original inspiration for the story was the Arabian Nights, and I really loved how a desert setting would create this feeling of isolation and desperation and desire. But I didn't really know how that would work with the royalty aspects. So I thought for a while about doing a historical fantasy, kind of inspired by King Henry VIII, because as we all know, he was also fond of beheading his wives. But to be entirely honest, I'm not a huge history buff, and I know that would require a ton of research to do it justice. And for a first novel, that just seemed way too overwhelming. So then my husband suggested, well, what about something kind of steampunk? And it's like, oh yeah, I love steampunk. I like the whole Victorian England type style. It feels very royal. I love corsets and gadgets and all that cool kind of stuff. But again, I didn't want to set it in England, and I didn't want it to be really in a real place at all, just because for my first novel, I wanted complete freedom and complete control over my world. So what I did was I took the stylings of traditional steampunk and put it in that desert wasteland. And what you get with that is Desertera, this world of isolation and desperation and desire where people are clinging to water, clinging to other resources, but also to antiquity and religion and this romantic vision of a past that may or may not have ever even existed. And you know, it's kind of hard because it doesn't fit in a traditional genre box, and it has been kind of tough to market and explain. Like, giving an elevator pitch for Desertera is a hell of a task, and if you know how to do it, please let me know, because it's something I still struggle with. But at the same time, it's a really unique idea, and I think it's pretty cool. So hopefully, if you're watching this, you agree. All right, so the third question is, when did you know you wanted to become a writer? And honestly, I've wanted to be a writer as long as I can remember, so I don't know that there's an exact moment. My mom used to read to me a lot of storybooks as a baby and a toddler, and I always loved that, and I don't remember it, but she says that I would, start quoting the stories back to her even before I could read, sometimes adding my own embellishments. So I guess I've technically been storytelling since I could talk. But I remember completing my first short story in 2nd grade, and my teacher really encouraged me to keep going with writing. So I did because I loved it. And then when I was in 5th grade, that teacher told me, you can major in creative writing in college, and you can be an author for a career. All those books you read, the people who write them do that for a living. And that pretty much sealed the deal. So I majored in creative writing, and I'm a copywriter by profession, and hopefully one day a full-time author. All right, so the 4th question is, how did you find your editing company? And my best advice is coincidentally how I found mine. So I work with Red Adept Editing, and I found them through my author friend Jonas Lee. He used them, and I was really impressed with the quality of his books and the lack of typos and things. So I asked him for a referral, and he sent me their way, and luckily it's been a match made in heaven. I really love working with them, and I would highly recommend them to anyone looking for an affordable and extremely high quality editing company. But of course there are several other ways you can find editors. So one way, which works for editors, cover designers, literary agents, etc., is to find the books that impress you, that you think are good quality, and look in the copyright page and look at the acknowledgments page. Because more than likely in one of those spots, the writer will give credit or thank their editors, cover designers, etc. And from there, you can look up the editor or the company and see if they're within your price range and they're someone you might want to work with. You can also find marketplaces online, such as Readsy, which help writers come together with industry professionals. There's also a lot of industry websites like the Alliance of Independent Authors who list out reputable editors. And of course, there's always Google and social media if all else fails. So good luck. Finding an editor is a tough task, but once you find one that you really click with, it's worth it, and it makes you such a better writer and really adds a lot of richness to your publishing experience. All right, and our last question is, your husband tags you in a ton of movies on Twitter. So what is your favorite movie that you saw this month? Well, I want to preface this. So I think the best movie Daniel and I saw this month is Thoroughbreds, which is about 2 teenage girls who plot to kill one of their stepfathers. And it has a really dark sense of humor, complex characters, lots of suspense, and it was just a really well-made movie. However, my personal favorite that we saw is probably Tomb Raider. And don't get me wrong, it's not the best movie ever made, but I have a lot of nostalgia for the Tomb Raider franchise. It's one of those video games that I love to backseat game and watch my dad play and help him with the puzzles and stuff growing up. So I have a lot of love for Tomb Raider, and I really like what they did with this kind of rebranding and showing her origin story. I think the movie had good action, surprising emotional depth for what it was, and it also I thought the lead actress did a really strong portrayal of Lara Croft, and she was someone who I believed could be a badass, but yet she also had great vulnerability and a lot of flaws and stumbling blocks on her journey. So that was just really cool to see. But yes, Daniel and I watch a lot of movies, and if you want to know what we're watching, be sure to follow me on Twitter because he's always tagging me whenever we go to the theater. All right, and that is all the questions I have for March. So if you want to ask anything about my writing, publishing, movie going, etc., feel free to leave your question in the comments here, hit me up on social media, or send me an email. Alrighty, so thank you so much for watching and reading, and I'll see you next month.